In this episode of the Football Mental Health Alliance podcast, John shares his remarkable 15-year journey in football, covering roles from coaching and player care to leadership positions. John discusses his passion for holistic player care, blending psychology, coaching, and strength training to support players on and off the pitch. He reflects on his work with women's and girls' football, grassroots development, and international teams, including the Afghanistan Women's National Development Team and the Chagos Islands team. John highlights the importance of emotional intelligence, resilience, and creating positive environments for player growth. John also shares his deeply personal story about the loss of his daughter, Anastasia, in 2023, and how her memory inspires him to help others live fulfilling lives through football. This heartfelt episode offers practical tips for grassroots coaches on integrating player care, improving mental health awareness, and creating meaningful connections. Tune in for an inspiring and emotional conversation about football, mental health, and making a lasting impact both on and off the pitch.
Right, I'm going to just start today, John, by reading out your LinkedIn about section. I think it's lovely. So 15 years in football, serving many posts. I like to think I am different to other people, always looking for that gap, always looking to improve, and always looking to offer exceptional experiences to everyone I work with. I am shaped by my life experiences, and I use those experiences to change my little corner of the world to the best of my ability. I want people to have amazing lives and live amazing experiences. I will do my best to ensure that happens. I'm very much a people person. A deep love of psychology allows me to understand what makes people tick, what drives and what inspires. Nothing is better than seeing people fulfill their dreams. Player care is my number one passion. Coaching, analysis, psychology, S&C are all my sub-passions, put there to help me offer the ultimate in holistic player experiences and support both on and off a football field. Proud father to 4 wonderful daughters and 3 amazing grandchildren, and husband to my loving wife Kate. In loving memory of my daughter Anastasia, who passed away aged 20 in 2023. You drive and inspire me every single day. I help others live the life and experience the loves that you sadly couldn't. Brilliant that, John. I love it. Where do we start with that? Just give us a bit of background about yourself then, and what you've done, what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. I think having stated that I have many roles in football is probably the best place to start, because I have literally done everything from chairman of a non-league club through to goalkeeper coach to S&C analyst, manager of certain teams, director of football for certain organisations. So I've been on quite a wonderful, exciting and perhaps unique journey, to be honest.
Yeah.
I started my life out at a club called New Bohemians. I had to stop playing football quite early because of a heart condition.
Right.
So I didn't play at any particular decent level or anything like that. It was I was more into futsal than anything else. So I kind of like the small-sided format game. I was a goalkeeper, so I kind of it was non-stop action for a goalkeeper at that.
Yeah.
So that's where I started. Once I'd got news of my heart condition, I had to stop playing. I went into coaching. There was a club in Sheffield called New Bohemians that I spent a bit of time with, as I had no qualifications at that point. Came through as a goalkeeping coach. Went on to work with a Step 6 non-league club in Barnsley called Worsborough Bridge. And I started out as a goalkeeper coach there. 2 years later, I was chairman of the club. So kind of worked my way up and did many things in between that. It was about that time that, as part of my work as a chairman, that I got into women and girls football. Having got 4 daughters, it was always probably inevitable that I would go down that route, although I still maintain a healthy interest in the men's game. And whilst I was at Worsborough, we set up the first women and girls section in 120 years of the club. So that it was quite a big moment. And we started off with just an under-15s girls side, and we put a lot into that. And the, the under-15s that we got through were exceptionally talented. We had players from that side that went on to play pro, play for England, play abroad, play professionally. It was just it was such a wonderful project that we did that I was kind of hooked on the women and girls game at that point. So I steered that way, and my youngest daughter was kind of getting into playing at that point. So spent a bit of time at various clubs, did some really big work at Chesterfield Ladies, which was fantastic. Did a 5-year project there where we took a kind of a tier 7 club, and we really built it up over the years. And when I left, they were kind of fighting to get into the Women's National League, which was really good. Really successful junior section that we did. In the meantime, I did a little bit of work with the Afghanistan Women's National Development Team.
How did that come about?
It was an unbelievably bizarre project. I was doing some work with the Chagos Islands, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
The Chagos Islands men's team, which is another fascinating project. But with the Afghanistan girls, I got a message one day just saying, "John, are you doing anything at the weekend?" So I'm like, "No, I've got this weekend off." Right, I could just... We could do with someone just nipping down to Surrey to lead the Afghanistan team, because the manager and the coach can't make it, and they've got an international game that's being beamed on TV. So yeah, kind of jumped in a car and drove down to Surrey. I had 48 hours to set up for an international team with a team I'd never met, never coached, and most of them I couldn't understand the language. So that was an absolutely fantastic weekend. But they were housed not too far from me, so I ended up spending a year and a half with them, just offering them coaching and organising games for them and things like that.
How did you get over that language barrier then, or was it a classic example of football being a universal language?
Yeah, that weekend certainly was. Football was the centre point. We had some of the girls could speak English, some couldn't. So we muddled through. It was just we got there. I can't think to this day how we did it, but we did it in time. I actually learned some of the language, so I had to learn some Farsi and I started getting there, so that was quite good. Or Farsi is an offshoot of Persian, completely different to the English language, completely different language family. So that was tough. But this particular group of girls they're in the news quite a lot. It's a story you may have come across. They had to escape Afghanistan through fear of death, really. When the Taliban took over the country, these girls had maybe 72 hours to get out, because they were quite of celebrity status back in Afghanistan. Their families would have suffered for that, and some of the girls feared execution on the basis of that. So, and I'm talking, some of them were 14 years old, kind of just got the boots, got the kit, and ran, and kind of ran to Pakistan. There was a wonderful lady who was still doing the same work called Khalida Popal, and she kind of relocated the Afghan athletes all over the world. I think she saved 2,000 people. And the Afghanistan national development team ended up in the UK, in the north of England, and that's how I came across that. So I was working with girls not just that were loving the football, and they did love the football, it was their whole life, but had suffered deep trauma as well. So it was that was a wonderful project that I kind of keep, a heartbreaking one, but one that I keep. It is very close to my heart.
What's as a coach myself, what's the difference between coaching, boys and girls, men and women? Is there a difference between, coaching?
There is. I mean, that difference is closing, but there is a distinct difference. Coaching the men and boys game, it is a little bit quicker. It's obviously there's a lot more strength involved. It's a lot more of a physical game in the men's game. I find in the women and girls game, it's more tactical.
Yeah.
And you are very strategic. The game tends to flow better in the women's game. There's not that many crunching tackles or big fouls, whereas in the men's game, that can, particularly when I was working in non-league, there's a lot more stoppages in play. So I'd say that's the key difference. I think working like kind of on a psychological level with men and boys, I think it was easy for me because I had 4 daughters. And my wife and I have also served as foster carers for the last 15 years. So and we've only ever had girls because we've got girls in the house. So I think my adaptation to women and girls psychology has been a lot easier for me than I think it would be with the boys.
Yeah, of course. And so what differences have you seen then? How as a coach, how would you approach coaching, girls or women as you would to approaching men and boys on a not a technical level, but maybe like a psychological level?
Yeah, so from the outside, if you speak to anybody who's been involved in both sides of the game, they may say that the girls are more emotional than the boys. But actually, when you're working with them a bit deeper, I think the girls are perhaps more open about their emotions than the boys are. So I don't think particularly girls are more emotional when you're working with them. I just think they're more open about it, more expressive of it.
A bit like in life in general, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is still a thing in, like you say, in life, not just football, of boys and men being able to open up about things and talk about things. It's something I've always championed and tried to role model, but it is difficult because there are connotations associated with that. So like I said, people would say that girls are more emotional, but I think that's from the outset. I think it's from the outside looking in, and actually, I don't think that's the case. They just tend to express themselves better.
Yeah. It is a thing that you do see in society, don't you? And I think sort of football for me mirrors society, and it does. And I think, I don't know if you saw I saw a lot on social media earlier that, like, I think a club in Birmingham, and parents were fighting in stands at honestly, and like, it were all blokes, and and I think football still got that like connotation that it's okay to be aggressive. From football, a game, it's an aggressive game, and it's a contact sport, and we shouldn't take that out of it, but I think it should stay on pitch, and fighting over football, I've never understood it. And I'm like you, John, I've loved football all my life, I've been obsessed with it all my life, but I've never understood how people can fight over people kicking a plastic ball around. I just don't get it. And then parents kicking off at matches, shouting, swearing, giving referees crap abuse. I still can't understand it. It's one thing I'll never get. Is it what are the sidelines like in girls football?
I would say they're probably equal to that of boys. I've seen a huge shift in everything that you're talking about since COVID. Since we got back out after COVID, I've seen a huge shift in the way that people conduct themselves on the sidelines, and that's not to taint every person who watches a game, but I've seen a significant uprise in comments, in conduct, in issues, both on and off the pitch, really. But like you said before, football imitates life sometimes, and I've seen that as a general across society, and like I said, specifically since COVID. I've come away from coaching now, and one of the reasons is I got stuck. I just thought I've gone from sort of started them at under fives to start at. So my lad started playing football, went to the club I played for, and they said, like, if you're interested in helping out, but they said helping out, write your name down here. So I wrote my name down, not knowing what helping out would be. Thought it'd be helping with balls and bibs. Anyway, we're actually coaching.
So I took them from under fives onwards, and as they get older, you just see more dickheads on sideline. And what I mean by that, dickheads on spectator side and dickheads on coach's side. You know, and I pulled away last season because I thought I can't put up with idiots. Me, you know, I just can't. And that's what stopped me coaching. Not that I ever got into altercations. I'm not that type of person, and it's not that I was scared of getting into altercations because I'm not that type of person. I don't get drawn into stuff. I just couldn't be bothered with. I could see the escalation in people being dickheads. And that manifests itself in a number of ways, doesn't it? Having a go at refs, having a go at each other, shouting at the players, coaches having a go at players. And I just thought, not having it, you know, it's not. And, you know, my lad's moved teams now. He's gone to a lower division team. And he just said to me, he said, Dad, I can't do it. Hassle from sidelines. You know, and not that people having a go at him, because I would never allow that. And I would never allow anyone to have a go at my players. But just the atmosphere of, you know, tense atmosphere. And he just said, I just don't enjoy it. And I said, well, I don't care where you play, Jude, as long as you're enjoying it. Could be on moon. I don't care as long as you're enjoying it. And I've just, like you said, with COVID, I spoke to a lot of county FAs, and after COVID, the discipline went through the roof. But like you've identified, it's sort of plateaued. It's not come back down to previous levels.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't get it. I don't get how spectators, parents, carers, etc., cannot see the effect they're having on the players of all ages. We're not just talking about kids here. We're talking about, you know, adults as well. But I think it's because it's acceptable in the adult game, people think it's acceptable in the junior game, and it's not for me. It's not. And so, you know, sort of moving on to just looking at, you know, sort of your experience and things. You said you'd worked with another sort of international team, was it? Who was that? The Cotterill Islands, was it?
The Chagos Islands.
Chagos, that's it. And where are they? Where are they?
This is a story probably for a podcast all of itself. But the Chagos Islands, the Chagos Islands themselves are located about 1,000 miles east off the Mauritian coastline, kind of out near the Seychelles, right in bang smack middle in the British Indian Ocean. Sorry, not the British Indian Ocean, the Indian Ocean, because it's now known as the British Indian Ocean Territory.
Right.
But that's what it's known. So the backstory, and I'll keep this in its brief form. The backstory was that the islands were inhabited mainly by kind of ex-disenfranchised slaves. That were the Portuguese owned the islands at some point, and I think the French owned the islands at some point, and then the English owned the islands at some point. It was full of sugar plantations, but eventually the Chagosian people that became a culture because they were the ones that were on the islands and working the islands. So did so for 400 years. Then in the 1960s, after World War II, the English government set about a really awful campaign against the Chagosians to try and make them leave the islands. They did a secret under the table deal with the Americans to sell or to lease the islands, and they just needed rid of everybody. So they went through a campaign of removing people, and they suffered some awful things. The Chagosian people, an example of that was one morning they woke up and there was a law passed that you weren't allowed to have a pet anymore. So the government officials went knocking door to door. If you had a dog, just take it outside and shoot it.
And how long ago was this again?
This was in the 60s. So the people were dispersed, and eventually they stopped supplies to the island, and they had no choice but to leave. Most of them were sent to Mauritius, and only in the last couple of years has it been recognised that the Chagosians from the 60s and the generations that came are still living in houses that are slums with no electricity, no running water, all that type of thing. Quite a sizable community jumped on a plane and came to Heathrow Airport, had nowhere to go, so lived in the airport for 2 weeks. And after a lot of battling, they were placed mainly in Crawley, where since then quite a large community of Chagosians has risen. And the way that they keep their culture alive and the story of the Chagos Islands is through football.
Right.
So the guy that runs that, a guy called Jimmy Ferrer, I came across him on Twitter about 5 years ago, and I thought, I wonder if they need a performance analyst. So sent him a few
Seriously?
messages and ended up. We had a couple of big games. We won an international tournament, which was the first ever tournament win in their whole history. Yeah, absolutely. And to this day, still do a little bit of work with them as well.
Well, you literally just got in touch with them on Twitter and said,
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah,
Jimmy gets they're quite. There's quite a cult following of the Chagos Islands. Do you know what I mean? They're on the news a lot. Jimmy does a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of documentary. Every time we go to a game, there's a new set of documentary makers kind of filming and things like that. And Jimmy must get about 50 people a day trying to join. But I offered something a little bit unique. And I was also very interested in the people, the culture, the history of the islands. I've got maps and flags in my house and things like that. And I think that's what took him. He thought this guy's genuinely interested in what we're doing. He don't just want a little bit of fame, if that makes sense. So yeah, we got talking over a period of a couple of months. But yeah, that's basically how it started.
What's crack over there now in the Chagos, in the those islands? Are they Chagosians back living there, or is it still in flux?
There's been a campaign. So the main island of the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia, is an American naval base. A lot of the campaigns to Syria and Afghanistan were sent from there. The Chagosians have been fighting for their right to go back. It's the International Court, or the Court of Justice, said that the English occupation was illegal, and the English government said not interested. That's as simple as that.
Nothing ever surprises me with governments and people in power and stuff like that. It's without getting political, it's always small people that suffer, isn't it? Not just, I think, in every form of life in this country, it's always the small people, those without the resources to fight, or I don't mean fight literally, put up a fight. Don't surprise me that it's winds me up. So let's just, what you put on LinkedIn is player care is my number one passion. Why is that?
I think that's just naturally. I did the player care qualifications this year, and got introduced to the player care group and the wonderful work that Hugo does, and the massive steps that have happened in player care. I think it's something I've always done naturally. I've always looked after players, and I'm all about the experiences, and I want players to have wonderful, fantastic experiences when they step into changing rooms or like training pitches or whatever. I want them to feel like a professional footballer, no matter what level they're playing at. So I think player care is something that's always come natural to me. I've always wanted to look after players, make sure they're good, make sure everything's right in their lives. Same with the families. It's often come at a detriment to me. It also makes me, of all the roles I've had, it actually makes me quite a poor football manager, because I don't like dropping people. I don't like moving people on and things like that. I'm always want to work with people. So I've been the happiest when away from management. But it's just something that's always come natural to me. I naturally like to work with people, and I've always had the skills to do that.
I think it makes sense that in a more professional setting that the manager doesn't have much to do with player care, because then he's not having to make those decisions around moving them on, helping them with the part of moving in, moving out. It's just literally what happens on the pitch there, I suppose. But when you're doing everything, that element of, there must be more empathy around the individual and not just the footballer.
Yeah, you can work with them on a personal level, and that's the beauty of it, really. When you are their manager, you're kind of building somebody up, building the confidence up, maybe building a skill set up, or working with them on an S&C level, and then you have to drop them at the weekend because you've got to pick a squad of 11. So it doesn't quite work. The brilliant position I'm in now, and I'm pretty much working full-time player care at the club that I'm at the moment. I've had a very busy week, start to the week this week. But I like to make players selectable, if that makes sense. So I'm working on behalf of the player, and that's my job, and I love it. I'm working with the player on that level, so I don't have to make the decisions about who starts, who's a sub, who didn't quite make the squad. That's irrelevant to me, and it's irrelevant to my work with the player. So I do love that side of things.
So what sort of thing are you doing then to make a player, as you say, selectable? What areas are you working on? Is it can't just be technical, can it? Then is it other areas?
So yeah, I'm going to get a bit technical with you now. I do apologise.
Yeah. No, do.
So basically, about 6 years ago, there was a model that I was working with whilst doing my psychology degree that I really took to, something that called the biopsychosocial model, and that basically takes a person and looks at them on every level. So biologically, kind of physically, psychologically, and and socially as well. And I created quite a huge piece of work that looked at at 30 particular areas of a person, from the cells and genetics right through to the socials that we're setting up and things like that within the club. So yeah, when you talk about ability, yeah, you can work with someone with the ball at the feet. We've got coaches at the club at the minute that do that. I've got S&C qualifications and analysis qualifications.
What is S&C, John? What is S&C?
Strength and conditioning.
Strength and conditioning, right?
Yeah. So I've got the skills to be able to do something with data that's put in front of me and make a difference. But also I'm working with a player on a psychological level with confidence, with kind of things that they're worried about, nerves, anxiety, that type of thing. Creating an environment where as soon as they walk into our club, there's a positive environment, because that will only help. Every single aspect of their experience, I've probably spent a day planning and working out. And that's what we do. But also, for the first time, I'm at a club at the minute called YP Women's FC, who also have an academy, where you go for additional private coaching. The guys that run it are amazing. They're really amazing guys, which is why I joined them. And they've given me a platform where the player care package that we put together was probably, from my research, is probably the first in the country, if not wider, at this level. Because I'm now starting to work with players outside of football. So I have a look at their work situation, their education situation. I'm signposting people where appropriate. I'm working one-to-one with people and the families where appropriate. If someone, for instance, is looking at getting driving lessons, then I'd be out there researching who can give them the best experience, the best options, the cheaper options. Can I contact that person and get a deal? If they're looking at moving into their own house for the first time, the 21 that they're moving out, I'd probably help with that. I'd probably make sure that that's smooth. If somebody's got exams at college or university, I'm talking to them and saying, right, well, listen, we can't expect to be training all the time. So what does the next few weeks look like for you? We want you studying. Education is the number one priority for you. So let's do some work away from that. Maybe doing one-to-ones, maybe doing some strength and conditioning, where we can do some work with you privately and personally, just to make sure that you're keeping up with things. But we want that to work for you. You don't have to fit into our training, because the stress is too much.
A lot of the things you're talking about there is what clubs do for their players that are earning, millions of pounds a year, isn't it? That?
Yeah, exactly. And that was the scope, really. Player care is something I will now specialise in. Because that's the way that I want my personal career to go. Particularly, I'm knocking 50 now, so running around on a pitch and doing S&C and throwing medicine balls about don't quite work for me.
I know the feeling. Is this where you think the sort of the game's going now, and maybe not for obviously at a professional level, it's got to be there because the players are investments for businesses, aren't they? Ultimately, people think it's a team. It's not. It's a business, and the players are investments. Is this where it's going on a non-league grassroots level, do you think, or is this where it needs to go?
I don't think it's going there on a grassroots level at the
No.
minute. I think it's grassroots are quite far behind. I think there's a very strange middle level, which would be non-league football, which would be the semi-pro, maybe tier 3 and 4 side of the women's game. So I think player care is still voluntary at those levels. So, but it's what it is. It's so important. It's such a you put when you get a player, if you've got a player for 2 or 3 years, you put a lot of investment of time and money into that person, even at grassroots level. Do you know what I mean? They're you're still coaching, you're still buying equipment, you're still renting spaces to training, and so kind of keeping hold of that player retention side of things. If you're looking after your players, they will stay and you will grow. And it's as simple as that. So even at grassroots, look after your players, and you've got players for life.
Just thinking about this, then, obviously from your average grassroots team, Sunday morning, Saturday afternoon, maybe voluntary level, finances are tight, so maybe the money and the time is not there to really invest in player care to an extent that we probably all like to do as coaches or volunteers or chairman or committee members of a grassroots club. If there's two ways, I'm just thinking there's two things here where, for me, you've got like you sort of allude to it, maybe that like middle ground now, where there's a lot of academies that are popping up that play in the JPL, for example, and are players that a lot of them are then taken from these JPL clubs into professional academies. It seemed to me that these academies now that are at that tier above grassroots and are trying to, get players ready for pro academies, this is where the player care should be coming in, where they've got more investment and time for this type of thing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so in the boys' academies, they do have player care. The EPPP, which looks at the things that you've got to be offering you young male footballers coming through academies. You've got to be delivering life skills. You've got to be delivering educational opportunities. And I'd say the vast majority of professional academies have player care officers and player care managers. That's where it is big. Switch that to the girls, you have very, very, very few. But I think that's just where the girls' game is in a very strange state at the moment. And I think there's a lot of opportunities in academies to bring more people in, and some of it may just be awareness. It may some clubs that I've been talking to recently, it comes under their safeguarding kind of areas as well. I personally think player care is separate from safeguarding, but it's a great start if you've got your safeguard or your welfare officer also with a mind of player care as well.
People seem to sort of lump everything under safeguarding, don't they now? And I think it's an easy thing to do, but I don't think that's the right place to put everything. I think safeguarding is its own thing, and I think a lot of people now are sort of some of them are lumping mental health into safeguarding, and I think it's there's crossover, but I think they need to be their own separate, if you like, entities personally. But looking at player care, like from me, like you can see the professional academies, they have this. I'm sort of thinking of the academies that standard parents would pay for their sons or daughters to play in, that play in the sort of Saturday JPL. Those for me are what you're talking about. I think, are you seeing that they're embracing player care, or do you think they need to?
I mean, obviously my experience is more in the girls' game at that level, more than the boys' side of things. But in the girls' game, there was a shift a few years ago where there was a very distinct line between grassroots and academy, which was the RTCs, the regional talent centres. Now, a few years ago, those got scrapped, and the approach to that from the FA was that anybody could then set up an academy.
Yeah.
You could set academy in any format that your club needed, and it created a bit of a vortex in there, because you've got kind of the pro game academies, where the
Yeah.
pro clubs, the ones that held RTC licenses, are still offering that professional academy. And when I say professional, people are paid full time to be there and run that, if that makes sense. But then you've suddenly created, particularly with the JPL, you've created a middle ground where anybody can set an academy up, and that could be you standard grassroots club. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but so the offer is very, very wildly variant across the spectrum. There's no standard.
No.
And people can join a club and think they could expect the same as the next club.
Yeah.
It could be some could do player care, most don't.
Yeah.
So it's really a bit of a lottery. So there's no standard there.
No, I've seen that, and I see a lot of coaches and parents online commenting on these academies. You know, that like you say, have sprung up, and I'm not saying they're all terrible, anything like that, but I know a lot of parents and coaches have commented saying, look, you know, all clubs are doing now is sticking academies on back end of the name and charging parents 25 quid a time to coach the son, from a coach that 2 years ago were coaching a under-8s grassroots team, you know, on a Sunday morning. Again, I'm not saying they're all like that. There are some good ones. There's a guy that, one of our ambassadors, James Rourke, he runs Yorkshire Elite Football Academy, and they're brilliant. You know, that he does everything right, does James. He looks after the boys, and I know there's academies that have, you know, boys and girls teams now as well. So, you know, that some of them are doing really good work, and I know James does have a lot of players that are graduating then into pro clubs and pro academies and actually signing and playing first team football, and that is sort of, not speaking for him, but I think that's his aim for the good players that he gets through. You know, the aim is to get them into, you know, pro clubs, and those that maybe aren't good enough to make them the best they can to get them to be playing at a good standard. So he has really good sort of connections with clubs at every level to be able to sort of feed these players in and get them playing. And I think, you know, like I say, I think player care is not just about what you do from the training pitch or on the football field on a Saturday afternoon. So what could you know, your average, you know, because the majority of people that are involved in football are at that standard level, aren't they? You know, probably similar level that me and you played at. What can your average grassroots club coach volunteer do around player care? How can we incorporate player care into our clubs and teams?
I think it's awareness of these things. I think there's been a huge race. So this is an area I've always looked at, and I've always been behind this area, and I've been quite proactive in this area as well. I was many years ago now. I was delivering mental health courses for clubs for cost price. The cost it took petrol wise to get there and deliver it. Very recently, and I've delivered now to over 1,000 people. I was delivering online menstrual cycle courses so that clubs could understand the menstrual cycle and be able to deeper understanding of that, and that was completely free of charge. That was me giving back to the game. I recently attended one of your courses, the mental health first aid course. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was a fantastic course and changed the way it, even though I was delivering mental health courses, it changed my thinking a little bit. And I think that's the way to do it. And I think the most important thing to think about when you think about mental health or player care or safeguarding is that you're not a social worker, you're not a psychologist, you're not a general practitioner. The awareness and signposting is really simple to do. And I think the future of that is building awareness through mini courses and giving clubs the tools to signpost. And I know one particular signposting system that I learned about on your course was the Hub of Hope, and being able to. I was amazed when I put in my own postcode and I thought, hang on, is that 7,000 services here that like things you'd never heard of and never thought about. And that's the important part. You don't go in and sort problems out yourself, but it's about where to send somebody when that happens. And I think short awareness courses are the way forward, really, because volunteers at grassroots clubs, they can't go and do a degree, or they can't go and do a 12-week course on player care, for instance. They need them short, sharp hits,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way to go.
John, that is in a couple of sentences, that is amazing what you've said there. That is just absolute gold. And I'm not talking that you've referenced the training that we offer. It's just what you put in there, and how and in a simple way how any grassroots club can look after the players. Amazing. Just thinking that's going to be a great snippet for the podcast, is that, because you've just absolutely nailed it in a couple of sentences. When you did this, so I know you did the you went through the player care group, didn't you?
Yes, that's right.
And what did you learn on that then? What are the big takeaways from that?
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved that course. I think the main thing for me was it started to put something behind what I'd always done.
Yeah.
So it almost gave me a label. I was sort of like, but I've been doing that for years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Get that.
Player care, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So that's what I took. But I think every week there was something fascinating, and just the people that the big takeaway was talking to people that had been there, seen it, done it at the best clubs, and those proper life experiences that I was learning about, and the fact that we did kind of talk about some big players and big transfers, and it really made me think, like, particularly with social media now, it's easy to comment.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, oh, they've had a bad game, and they should do this. And if I'd be embarrassed if that were player, I'd be spending every day, all week training. And it's just not realistic. And I think it really made me think about, you can take any footballer, any Premier League, Championship club, whatever, and you can't forget that inside there's a human being.
Yeah.
And that person has to relocate, which is big for anybody. They have to bring the family to a new city.
Yeah.
The kids have to go in new schools.
Yeah.
Someone's got to move into a street that they've never heard of in their life, get a brand new car, set up the Sky, set up the broadband, sort their electricities and the utilities out, shift everything across. And meanwhile, they've got a price tag attached to them where you've got tens of thousands of fans demanding performances. And you think, well, I'm doing this on a 3-year contract, so this might be a temp job, and I might go ahead and do it. And that's quite a lot of pressure. I
think it's something that your average person just can't comprehend, because picking up on what you said then, if we move jobs, it's generally within a commuting distance, isn't it? People do relocate and things, but that is not the norm in everyday careers and life, is it? Unless you're CEO or something like that of a Fortune 500 company. And I think, like you said, people don't look at the elements of what that player has had to do to get on that pitch. And like you said, then it's like you think, well, he could be thinking, and I'm sure a lot of them do, I'm here for 3 years and then I'm off again. Or it might not be 3 years because club might want to shut me, or I might my kids might not settle, my wife might be unhappy, my partner might be unhappy, and people don't see that. And I think that goes back to the psychological side of a football player. And how do you, from a psychological side, and what's going on upstairs, basically, what sort of things do you put in place for that, and what sort of things do you look out for?
Yeah, so kind of a few years ago, I created a tool that measured executive functioning.
Right.
In football, I wanted to transfer. I was fascinated with executive functioning and emotional intelligence and things like that. So I created a tool that allowed me to assess executive functioning in players, to a small percentage, to help improve their performance, but also to help me understand that person as a person. And by understanding how they operate mentally, I can put more tailored support in, and the approach that I have will be different to every player, and it just helps me understand how somebody processes information, how resilient they are to certain situations, and how they recognize empathy and thoughts and feelings in other people. So that's, I'm all about assessment and recording and kind of that academic approach, if you like.
Yeah.
But I'm also very good with people, and I can often emotional intelligence is one of my skills,
Yeah.
and I can see things when people change,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and that's been an acquired skill over years. So it's understanding the person, and I
Yeah.
can tailor support. Everybody's different, and there's no kind of one
No.
stop off the shelf solution. It's knowing people, getting to know them, and using something that I term as absolute regard. My care for
You
you,
said that in the training. I remember that
yeah,
because
yeah.
Chris, our trainer, loved it. Just a couple of things. I was just going to ask you what your definition of emotional intelligence is, or EQ, because a lot of people use it, don't they? Use the term. What is it?
So emotional intelligence is, in a nutshell, is somebody who can recognise the thoughts and feelings of others, is very empathetic, can notice changes in psychology, but also a person that can adapt to and is resilient to things changing. So if you want to put that in a pure football context, you can plan all week. How are
Yeah.
you going to play against somebody? How are you going to you game plan and things like that? But suddenly after 10 minutes, you're 3-0 down.
Yeah.
How do you adapt mentally? Do you crash? Or are you that resilient person that can say, right, I need to see now through all the chaos what needs to change, and
Yeah.
I'm going to take ownership now and put that right. And I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to put my arm around that person who needs an arm around them right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to get in the ear of somebody who needs that right now. And I recognize how people work, how people adapt, and I'm a leader within that. That would be my definition of emotional intelligence in a football sense. And a lot of studies now will say that the most successful players are people who display levels of high emotional intelligence.
That you just broke that down in layman's terms brilliantly, John. Thank you. And I think like when you gave us that analogy of that person saying we're 3-0 down, what do I need to do? I'm a resilient. I think that works for like a player and a coach as well, doesn't it? You know, the player on the pitch and the coach on the sideline. And then you mentioned terminology that we loved when you said it on the mental health first aid course, and that's absolute regard. Just talk us through that and just give us the whole caboodle around that.
Yeah, so absolute regard is something that I use constantly. And most relationships within football are relationships with a purpose. Whether people know that they're doing that or not. And it's not malicious, but relationships can be based on results. Relationships with players can be based on performance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I need a stronger relationship with that person because I need them to keep performing. And actually, you're not performing at the minute. You're not getting in my squad. I need to just push you to one side a little bit because my limited time has to go into you to keep performing or you to get you performing because that's where we need you. And so it's a relationship with conditions. Um, and that's quite tough in football. The wonderful and beautiful thing about player care is that you can have absolute regard. So my relationship with you is that because you are a person that I want to work with, and I don't care how you did at the weekend. I don't care whether you had a good or poor training session. I want to help you because that's what I want to do,
Mm.
regardless of other things that are happening. So whether you're getting picked or not, whether you're the star player or the person that hasn't got on the in the team for the whole season, my kind of approach to you doesn't change. I will work with you regardless of what's happening. So I'm giving somebody my absolute regard. It's
So
not conditional.
so how can that goes for the coach at a grassroots level then? How can a coach at a grassroots level give their players absolute regard?
I think it's difficult
Yeah.
because of the nature of the game. Um, and you and I think more than ever, you do have fleeting players come and go more than they ever
Mm.
did. So you do have to build quick, easy fix it relationships. And I suppose again, if I was to kind of talk to a coach about this, it's about just being aware. Do you know what I mean? What is my time? Where is my time? And what am I saying to people? Do you know what I mean? It's am I over praising somebody whilst over criticizing somebody else,
Mm.
or am I trying to work with them on their level?
Yeah.
That it's being aware of the interactions that you have and the effect that those interactions have on that person. It's all about awareness for me.
That's difficult. How, like, rhetorical question probably, but how do you know if you are sort of going too far with one or too far with the other? You know, that's the thing with football and coaching, again, at grassroots level, that you're often a coach, a mentor, a parent, a psychologist, a teacher. You know, you've got all, you know, you're wearing sort of several hats every training session and every game. And I think, you know, like a lot of the people on the sideline, spectators, don't see that and don't respect it enough, and
Yeah.
expect you to be all of those five and more perfectly every session and every game. And we're human, we can't be, can we? You know, we all make mistakes about how we've dealt with a player or what we've said or what we've done. You know, how do you find that balance?
I think there's two things important to remember here. And I think number one, there is a balance and you can be aware of your own interactions. That's your part to play. But you also have to remember that things are in a constant state of flux.
Mm.
It's almost impossible to always get it right because humans are not stable people. Like our mindset, you can have a bad day, good day. We don't have a constant day.
No.
So you could get things right for 1 minute. That's the wrong thing to do 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
So you should never expect perfection. You should never expect to get it right. Okay. And it's all right that sometimes you're going to annoy somebody because that's just life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you might have talked someone in that same way all season,
Yeah.
and on the last game of the season, they lose a temper with you because it was the wrong thing for them, but you don't know that because you're not in their mind. So it's having it. If you personally are, you're consistent in your approach, you're consistently working with players and giving them the time, then that's the best thing that you can do. One thing that I did, and it was my most important tool as a coach and a manager, was my very famous, if anybody's worked with me, they'll know it's my very famous walk and talks. And I used to, a player used to get 2 walks around a football pitch with me in the middle of training. So someone else would be running the session and say, right, it's your turn.
Yeah.
And that was their space to talk about anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And we walked side by side. We weren't sat at a table facing each other. So we weren't threatening.
Yeah.
And we just walked and talked like as if it were just a casual chat. And they were the most that's the most effective tool I've ever used in I found out more about people in that 6 or 7 minutes walking round.
Yeah, brilliant.
Than anything else I could have done.
That's creating a you know, sort of a sense of communication and openness and things, isn't it? And the more you do that, the more people are confident to open up to you, to explain things to you. And then I suppose then that allows you to be more empathetic and get things right more often and know when to say, what to say and how to approach that person, judging on their body language or things. So like you said, you know, you could speak to one person the same all season, and then the last game you could say the exact same thing, but it was the wrong thing at that time for that person. And doing what you've done there allows you to, and it goes back to emotional intelligence, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that's a way to build your emotional intelligence, by doing something such as simple as walking round a pitch for 2 laps with each player over the course of a season or a month. That's how you're going to build your emotional intelligence. A bit like reading a book if you want to be academically intelligent, isn't it? You're reading people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's building connections, and the more connections you build with that person, the better relationship you build. And that one-to-one time, I still say that's the best tool I use.
Brilliant.
I love that time when I was walking, and the things I'm not going into too much detail, but I found some wonderful things about people, and I've also found some horrific things that have happened in people's lives that you just wouldn't know or find out.
No.
And you think, that makes sense.
I
need to change my approach here.
Yeah, you can join some dots, can't you? And you start to get, I get why this person is like they are in a certain situation, or all the time, or in, you know, certain times of the day. Yeah, no, I get it. I love it. And again, that's brilliant. Just wanted to touch on when I explained you know, sort of talk through your bio on LinkedIn. Proud father of 4 wonderful daughters and my 3 amazing grandchildren, and husband to my loving wife Kate. Don't look old enough to have 3 amazing grandchildren, I'll be honest with you, John.
I feel it.
I don't feel it. And the last paragraph was in loving memory of my daughter Anastasia, who passed away aged 20 in 2023. Can you expand on that? Can you let us
Yeah,
know?
of course. So my second oldest daughter, Anastasia, I had a phone call one afternoon. It was a normal, everyday day, and somebody on the other end of the phone said, "I'm sorry to let you know that your daughter's died. She's passed away." And it was sort of like, "What?"
Literally as
Wow.
blunt as that?
It. If I'm honest, I can't remember.
No.
So it probably was a bit more empathetic than that, but I can't remember it really.
No.
But I just know I'd had this phone call, and it absolutely changed our lives. She was 20 years old at the time. She did have illnesses all her life, but nothing that was life threatening. And then one day, she woke up and she was really ill. Went to hospital and she died within hours. It was just, we weren't there. We didn't know anything about it. We found out afterwards, and as you can imagine, it changed everything. That day, somebody took me from planet Earth, and they put me in a different place where everything looked the same, but it smelt different, it felt different, it sounded different, and the journey that my wife and I and the rest of the family have been on since then is just unlike anything that you can never prepare for it. It was such a shock to the system.
Can't imagine it. Can't. Like you said, I just can't. And I just think that is the worst nightmare of any parent, going before your kids. I'm so sorry to hear that, John. And I didn't know that until I'd sort of looked into your bio, and I just thought, with it being on your bio, then it must be something that you're open to discussing. It's not sort of thing I would ever put on anyone. How did that affect your mental health?
It's to this day, it's hard to explain because you can't you can't say, "Oh, I've suffered PTSD because of that," or depression because of that, because every day is so wildly different, and it is wildly different. Every hour can be wildly different. Sometimes I think about it every day, like every single day. I think about it. But I did something very, very early on, and I came to a conclusion very early on in it. And it was that she died at 20 years old. She died 7 days before her 21st birthday. We'd planned for her to go to a West End show and a musical and something she'd always wanted to do, and she didn't get to do it. And I made a decision that must drive me. That must drive me, because if I step back and sit back, because the first thing I did was leave football, said to everybody, "I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore." Do you know what I mean? But then I realised that somebody's opportunity to live a life had been taken away. And if I then remove my own opportunity to live a life and help other people live a life, then I'll be mocking her memory, because she didn't have that opportunity. And there is nothing more that she would have wanted than for me to go out and make sure that people took their opportunities. And on my birthday, she died 8 days after my birthday. And on she had a Facebook page like most people her age do, and her very last post on social media was on my birthday, and it said, "Happy birthday, Dad. You've been a fantastic dad, blah blah blah." And at the end it said, "I am so proud of you and the work you do for other people, and that's what makes you special." There were her last words on social media, and I took that and I thought that's what really brought the conclusion. That's what she was proud of me for. And the drive that I get from that now is that I stepped up, and really it eventually led me to player care. That everything I do is to allow people, to show people the beauty of life that we take for granted so often. And my chosen medium to do that is football, because I like to think I'm pretty decent at being able to do it within football. But I find I work with players now, and I want them to love it, and to not just go through the motions, but I want them to look back and say, I had an amazing life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't wasted.
Yeah.
We worked hard. Yeah, we had to go training 3 times a week, but I loved it. I loved the environment. I did make it as a pro footballer, but you know what? I loved trying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what drives me now, because she didn't get that opportunity, and she would want me to bring that opportunity to others.
Yeah, it's about like sucking every last drop out of every day and enjoying it, and sort of living in the present as well. You know, sort of enjoying what you're doing as you're doing it, and trying to be grateful for that. You know, as opposed to past or future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we do this, don't we? We plan. Well, everyone's got a 5-year plan, and we're looking at doing the next thing, and that's the next thing, that's the next thing, and like you say, we don't enjoy the moment sometimes.
No.
We've got a fantastic, I've got a fantastic family around me. You know what I mean? An amazing wife, and I've got amazing kids. And we, like, for instance, we had an evening last night where I love cooking, and I'd lost that through football, and I started cooking again, and having family round, and we bought this big table where we can get all the family round, and it's chaos, because sometimes we've got all the kids, we've got my parents come through, we've got the grandkids running around causing me chaos, and I'm just cooking and cooking and cooking, but we love that.
Yeah.
They're the moments that you've got to grab the moments sometimes, and appreciate what you've got, and love every minute of it. So
I think I'm certainly guilty of that. Like, you know, for past God knows how long of my life, since I started working for myself, or once I got into working for myself, I've always constantly been looking in front, you know, having this right, you know, not today, but 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 5 years. And you know, I sort of look back now at my age, and I think, I can see how I've sort of never cherished the present, if you know what I mean. I've never, because I'm never present. My wife says to me, says, you know, she doesn't say in a nasty way, you know, but she says, you're never present, Dan. And literally I am. I'm always looking there, you know.
We're conditioned to do that, though, aren't we? You go to school, you're conditioned to what you're doing at uni or college. When you go to uni or college, you're conditioned to what career you want. You get in a career, and it's like, oh, how do I get the next promotion? Nobody ever gets by in a job. When you sit in an interview and say, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? I want to do the same thing day in, day out. You're not saying I'm ambitious and I want to take that.
No. But some people, the world needs that though, John, as well, don't they? You know, and like I've seen people that do, you know, and I'm not knocking it all, stay in the same job for 20 years or so, and they're happy, you know, happy as all, you know, and they're not chasing this thing that's always in front of them, and you know, and you know, my sister's like that probably. You know, me and my sister very similar in some respects, but she works for the NHS. She went to work for them straight, so she got work experience there, and then they said, when you finish, come and work. She's worked for NHS for the last, God knows, 25, whatever, how old she's, 25 year maybe, you know, and she's not a chaser, and she's happy. You know, she's relaxed. She never gets stressed about, oh, where I'm opposite, I'm chasing. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm chasing, John. Seriously. You know, I'm looking, I'm thinking, what you're chasing here, Dan? Because you don't know
because
sometimes.
You feel the need to chase, because that's how you're conditioned. The need to have to chase.
I've conditioned myself for that, and like I've always, every job I've ever had, I've always wanted to move on. I've always wanted to, and I always have. I've always, you know, every job I've ever had, I want there 2 minutes, and they moved me up as a kid. I would do, you know, moving up ladder, every job. And you know, sometimes I wonder, I think, damn, what are you actually chasing? And I don't know sometimes. And then you sort of hear sobering stories like this, and you think, I'm going to try and do, you know, more around being grateful and just being in the present. I think the best thing that when I've done it is sort of meditating for 10 minutes, 15 minutes on a morning, and writing down stuff that I'm grateful for. That allows you to be present. And I think, John, you know, I can't imagine what you've gone through. All I can say to you is take my hat off to you for using that as a driver, because for me that either drives or debilitates you.
Yeah,
and for
absolutely.
the majority of people, I know me, I'd debilitate me. And you've used it, and you've and I think when you said you're good at doing this in football, you could do it in any arena, John. You could what your experience you've got, and what you've gone through and what you're doing. Don't just. I'm not saying you shouldn't just limit yourself to foot. I'm just saying you could do it in any arena, John.
Yeah,
You could stand up on this. I'd listen to you on a stage, mate. I would. What you've spoke to today.
I'm not quite ready for that yet, if I'm honest.
No, but what I mean is, like, everything that you've described, everything you've talked about today has been clear and understandable to anyone. And that's how you communicate with people, to me. It's like, if you heard that Rudyard Kipling, walk with kings, or, talk with kings and walk with the common people. Yeah. You've laid out stuff that you do at an intricate level that anyone can understand. And that is how and that's why I know you're good at what you do, because you'll be able to connect with all your players on their level, and you'll be able to innately know what to say to them, how to address them, and how to put what you're trying to say to them in a way that they understand and also want to move on. And that's how I know you're good at what you do. So take me out after you, mate. And you can see you've worked hard.
Compliment. Thank you.
As you can see, and I can see how empathetic you are to people. And I know what you said earlier. You said sometimes it's come at a cost to you, and that does happen with highly empathetic people. They're sort of so empathetic that they put other people before the self a lot of the time, emotionally and in the welfare and stuff. And I've seen people that do amazing things, and I'm not saying you're like this. And sometimes I've said just try and make sure you don't lose. Not saying this to you, John, because I know you don't strike me as a, you know yourself. But I've said to people before, just make sure you keep hold of yourself as well, and not save some of yourself back for you, not and that's what I've seen. So John, honestly, I could listen to you all day. Thanks so much for this. And so many, as you're talking, I'm thinking I can clip that. It's going to be a brilliant little snippet, is that. So thanks so much, John. Thanks for being open. Thanks for teaching me a lot of stuff here. I'm sure everyone that listens to this will learn something. Anything you'd like to finish on?
I think it's I might go down that shout out route. I think.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of absolutely wonderful people this has not been a lone journey. I've worked with some amazing people that have given me the skills, the support, the platforms to be able to do what I do. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's not a lone journey. They work with people around you. I've surrounded myself often with people that have similar mindsets to me, and I've struggled to work with people that don't. And I'm very honest about that. So actually, I don't want to work in this environment because it wouldn't suit me, and I wouldn't be at my best with that. But I've had wonderful people that have worked with me, and there is as much credit to them for the work I've done than myself, really, because they've been superb, and they'll know who they are, and they'll know the what effect they've had on me, and I'll let them know, and I'm very open about letting them know. And there's some brilliant people out there, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, and often that goes unnoticed as well. Particularly in football, people are judged on their results, and they're sometimes the trophy cabinet, and that's football. I completely understand that, but they will never be celebrated for the work that they do off the pitch as well.
Brilliant. John, again, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Been brilliant, and like I say, I could listen to you all day, mate. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're more than welcome.
Cheers, John.
Thank you.